Hey, what is up guys? Today we are going to start spawning our towers just like this. So we're going to spawn some kind of preview in front of us so we can look at what we spawn before we spawn it. We're going to be working towards making some kind of build mode in the next few episodes. So it's a big topic. Make sure you don't get distracted too much. This is going to be really important stuff for our game. So guys, without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so today we are going to tackle the build mode, and it's going to be quite a big script. We're gonna start really slowly, but we're gonna keep working on pretty much for the next few episodes for sure, and then there's gonna be some build fix to do later on, not the bug fix actually, but we won't do that just yet. Like I said at the beginning of the series, we are trying to get this working as soon as possible, 100% working, well maybe not 100%, but you know, have a game flow going so we can, you know, enter a map, play it, exit the map, maybe save some score. We want to have that game flow as soon as possible so we can actually start maybe putting some arts in there. But okay, enough talking, let's go ahead and create ourselves a new script. This one is going to be in I'm not sure actually. Let's put it in system, should we? Yeah, okay, let's put it in system. And this is going to be the build mode. And we are going to put the build mode on top of the level manager. So let's go ahead and drag this right here. Okay, double click on that, let's open it, and let's start writing this really huge script. Okay, so first off, we inherit from mono behavior. That's going to be fine for now. Maybe later on we need to make this inherit from a mono singleton, but right now let's just leave it like that. Let's start really slowly writing that script. Okay, so the first thing we'll need actually is a public list, and since it's a list, let's go ahead and include the system.collection.generics. Now we can use lists. So public list, let's have a list of game object. So the list of game object are pretty much going to be the tower prefabs. So all the tower that we're allowed to spawn are going to be in this list. We're going to drag and drop these manually. So save this. And let's actually go assign it right now. So on top of level manager right now, you should have a public list. I'll make it of size. Right now we only have one tower if I'm correct. Let's go in prefab, projectile tower. We only have the arrow tower. And you know what? I'll actually rename this so it's not confusing. So arrow tower, that's only one. Let's go ahead and make the list size 1. And we're going to drag and drop this right here. Hit apply, and of course we are now going to go back inside of our script. We're also going to need 2 transforms, so let's call this one player transform, and another one camera transform. And I will show you what these, I'll show you why we need these a little bit later on, but in order to show you that, we need to put in the concept of the spawn preview game object. So declare yourself a spawn preview game object. This is pretty much going to be before you spawn. You want to have a preview of your tower. So say you activate the build mode, so right now you're in a building mode, then I want to be able to put a tower in front of you, and then you're going to make sure that it's a good one. You're going to make sure that its position is right, and then you hit accept. You spend the money or the mana, then it creates the tower. So this is the concept of the spawn preview. It's not going to be a tower that shoots. It is simply going to be a tower that follows your player around and snaps to the predefined area where he can spawn it. Okay, so after that, we are also going to need a private bool, which is simply going to control are you active or not. So is my build mode active? Are we currently building, right? So this is what I need over here, and then that's pretty much it for this episode. Of course, we're not going to be tackling any more of that. We actually got quite a lot to do here, so let's go ahead and declare ourselves a private void start. In the start, we are going to assign only our spawn preview. So let's go ahead and create the spawn object preview. We could call this create the tower preview. Simple as that. And we will do spawn preview is equal to instantiate. We're gonna instantiate the tower prefab, the first one. And we don't really need any object right now, but I just like to instantiate something so we got something to work with. So let's go ahead and create the first tower in our list. We're not gonna see it though, because right after that we'll do spawn preview.active is equal to false. So we create that object, but we turn it off immediately, so it doesn't matter if it's the first or the second tower. Okay. And then of course the isActive is false. Now we're gonna go down here, start declaring an update, so private void update. And we will start by doing a pull input. That's the way we call our method that pretty much checks which input are you pressing right now. So let's go just beneath that and declare ourselves our private void input. And in here we do our input checks. So let's start with a simple one. If input.getKeyDown. Again, like I said, we are going to redo these whole input thing a little bit later on when we start implementing the joystick to our game. So say you have a Windows controller that you want to use. So these are all going to be wiped. In this if statement, then I'm checking, are you pressing the key that I'm going to use to toggle the build mode on and off? In my case, I'll be using the R key, so that's why I wrote key code R. So every time I press R, it's going to turn on or turn off the build mode. So let's do that right here. If is active, so if the build mode is on, then we're going to call the function that we haven't made yet. So let's go down here, private void disable build mode. So if the build mode is currently active, go ahead and call this function disable build mode, else call activate build mode. Again, we're gonna need to declare this function. So private void, I'll just copy this. Okay, so I hope you're getting the picture a little bit. So pretty much we're pulling the inputs every frame, because this is in the update. Every frame we're checking, are you pressing the R key? If you are, well, are we currently building or we're not building? If we're currently building, then go ahead and call this function, which is going to disable our build mode, and we can go back to a normal, normal mode, of course. And after that, we check, are you not building? If you're not building, then we activate it. And down here, it's quite simple. We're simply going to do is active is now equal to true because we activate it. And then we'll turn the spawn preview.active to true as well. So we enable our preview turret because we're now in build mode and we want to see where exactly we're going to spawn our tower. Same thing down here. So is active in this case is going to be equal to false, and spawn preview.active is going to be equal to false. Okay, now let's try this out. We should see something if we start playing right now. It should be off by default, so when we spawn in the private void start, we create that tower, we instantiate it, and then we turn it off. So arrow tower over here, this is the one I've spawned because it is a clone. And I also turned it off because it's inactive right now. Then if I press R, it's now on. And I should be able to see it somewhere in the scene. Let's go into scene view. Where is it at? Oh, is it this one? Okay, so it instantiated this one. So this is my tower preview. Now, obviously, as you can see, we cannot be spawning it here because that's a bad position. So every single frame, what I'd like to do is I want to make sure that this tower follows my player around. So say my player was moving in this direction, then I'd like my tower to follow him around, pretty much to have a preview of where exactly you can spawn it. So we're gonna do that right here in the update. We're gonna declare, of course, if we are active. So if we are not active, simply do a return. Now, if you are active, I like to move my spawn prefab, or I mean spawn preview. So move the spawn preview, and it's a function that we're gonna have to pretty much declare, say down here. So private void move spawn preview, and in here we're gonna make sure that at the very end of that we do so spawn preview that position, no, actually that transform that position is going to be equal to something. We still don't know what because we haven't calculated it yet. Okay, so let's tackle that topic right now actually. We need to spawn this tower at the player's position. So we're gonna do vector3 preview, preview position is equal to player transform dot position. So now it's going to be exactly on top of our player. Then after that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to move it in front of where my player is looking at. So it doesn't matter which rotation our player has. So say we're walking backward. It doesn't matter. We don't want our preview to be following the rotation of the player. We want our preview to be following the rotation of the camera. So we gotta make sure that it's always, in our view, we always see the player first, and then in front of him, say 3 meters in front of him, we see the preview. We are going to add to our preview position. So right now this is the player's position. Then we're gonna do plus equal, and we're gonna take our player transform dot position minus our camera transform dot position, which will give us a directional vector starting from our player towards our camera. Then we're going to normalize it so it's of length 1, and we'll do times, say it's going to be 3 meters in front of us. We're actually going to put this into a constant field, so I'm going to go up here and I'll do private const float, and like I do with constant, I put them in all caps. So this is going to be preview distance from player is equal to 3, and I'll use that field, replace it. Okay, now what else are we supposed to do? We're actually going to just assign that, just have a look at what this gives us. So let's do spawn preview dot transform the position. So the position of my spawn preview is equal to the one we just calculated, which is the player position plus 3 meters in front of where he's looking at. Press play on this. We're gonna go in the open. Now I'm gonna hit the play mode, actually the build mode. And this is why we need to set our player and camera transform. Okay. So we got a null reference exception, which means it was not able to find the player transform. This is set to null. And that's normal because the build mode doesn't know who the player is. So right here in our move spawn preview, before we actually do the math to position our preview position, we're gonna say is player transform equal to null. And while we're at it, we're also going to check if the camera transform is set to null. So if player transform is equal to null or the camera transform is equal to null, and now we need to set both of these. So let's go ahead and say at the end, well, in the end, we're going to say return in case one of these wasn't set properly. Of course, when we do a return here, it's not going to evaluate this, it's not going to run this, which is fine because we're updating this pretty much every frame that the that the build mode is active. So even if we skip a single frame, it's not going to be, it's not going to be seen at all. Okay, so let's do player transform is equal to game object dot find game object with tag, and it's going to grab the game object that has the player tag, and then we assign its we get its transform. So let's just make sure that our player has the player tag. I don't remember putting a player tag in front of my player, so not in front but on top of my player. And when I choose my player up here, you can see that tag is untagged. That's bad. Let's put it on player so we can pretty much have a reference to this object anywhere in our code by simply calling game object.find object with tag. Now I'm going to hit apply. Don't forget to hit apply, really important stuff. So when we spawn it a little bit later on, we don't get this weird null reference error. That's going to be useful when we start switching maps. Right now in this one it's static, that's fine, but eventually we want to be able to spawn our player when we load the scene. Okay, so make sure the tag up here is player. Now this line should work, but we still don't have a camera transform. So what we're going to do is we're going to say camera transform is equal to camera.main.transform. Now camera.main.transform works in a really similar way. Actually, what happens in the code behind is this. So I'm just going to put this in comment right on top of it so you can understand. This pretty much happens here. So camera.main is in fact equal to GameObject find GameObject with tag main camera. So it is going to find the camera that has the main tag on it. As you can see, the first enabled camera tagged as main camera. Now again, let's go ahead and make sure that our camera actually has the main camera tag. And oh, that's a little bit interesting because we don't actually have a camera. We spawn it at the beginning of our game. So what we'll need to do is we will need to go back inside the camera modder. If you remember, it's in camera, and then we'll do camera modder. And over here, we actually instantiate that object that is going to contain our camera. So camera container is pretty much the camera that has our object. So that's the camera container. That's why we call it like that. Just below these line, so right now we're in the camera modder. Right below that, we're going to say camera container dot tag is equal to main camera. Now again, make sure you don't do any mistake in this. So capital M, capital C, main camera. Okay. Let's play on this, see if everything works just fine. Oh, and then I press R, and as you can see, this is my new way of calculating things. So the preview position is always 3 meters in front of where my player is looking. Good. Okay, so it works just fine. Now what we'd like to do, we'd like to modify it a little bit so it snaps to the ground and we don't get this kind of behavior when we're looking down. So pretty much right now, since we're looking in that angle, then it's actually putting it below the ground and we can't see it. Right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a raycast actually. We're gonna take that very position right here. So we're gonna take that spawn previewed position, which is down here. Then we're gonna go ahead, put 5 meters up, so right about, let's say we do it here. So this plus 5. We're gonna go over here, then we're gonna send a raycast downward, and if it hits this, the ground, then we're gonna position that right here. Okay. To do that, we're actually going to need to open up our script again. I don't know why I closed it. And we're gonna do additional line here. So right beneath that, so right beneath the preposition is equal to this, we are going to say, well, first off, we're going to declare a raycast hit. So raycast hit, and we're going to say if physics.raycast, we're going to take the position we're at right now, so preview the position, plus vector3, plus vector3.up times 5. So we're going to go ahead, take the position we had before, go 5 in the y-axis, so 5 up, and then we're going to do the vector3.down. So we're going to shoot our ray downward. If we hit something, we put that information inside the hit field, which is declared up here, so out hit, and we're going to do a maximum of 10 meters. So we're going to be able to spawn our object 5 meters above our player and also 5 meters beneath. So it's going from plus 5 to minus 5. That's why we put 10 over here. Now in player mask, that's going to be also very important. To make sure that this raycast doesn't actually hit enemies and our preview goes on top of the enemy, we need to make sure that only the ground is being targeted by that raycast. So we're gonna do layer mask dot get mask, and we're gonna get a layer that we don't have yet. So let's go ahead and call it ground. Okay. So our raycast, oh, forget about the semicolon here. Our raycast is going to be shot only against objects that have the ground layer on it. Okay. Now, if we do hit something, then we're gonna say preview position dot y is equal to hit dot point dot y. As simple as that. Okay. Let's go ahead and I don't know why this is not working. Oh, we're missing a parenthesis here, so let's fix that. Now this should not work just yet, just because we don't have any objects in the scene that use the ground layer. We actually don't even have a ground layer. So go ahead and select your floor. So any floor that is going to be considered as your collision mesh. In my case, this is my floor. So I'm just selecting it, and in the layer drop down over here, I'll go down to add layer and add a ground layer just like this. So where is my ground now? Right here. We're gonna go back on your ground object, go into the layer drop down and choose the ground layer. Okay, now let's go ahead and hit play. Press R, and it now snaps to the ground, as you can see. And that's pretty much the behavior we want. Now, what we could do right now, because we don't make our own object, we use prefabs from Unity. Well, not prefabs, but we use pretty much cubes from Unity. It means that our pivot point for our object, so the arrow tower in this case, our pivot point is right in the center, and that's not really cool. That's not what we want, because we want our pivot point to be right beneath our object. So when we decide to spawn something, say on the floor, it's not actually looking like that. It's actually looking like this instead. So our pivot point would be there. Now in our case, since we don't make these objects, then we don't really have the liberty of that. We can't really move our pivot point, because that's something you do in the 3D software. So what we could do to fix this, again temporarily, we could go up here in the preview position.y is equal to this, and we could say simply take the hit point.y and do -1 just for now. Again, when we start implementing the art assets in our game, we're going to make sure that the pivot point of our tower is beneath them, so we can spawn them exactly at the hit point.y. Since we don't have that luxury just yet, we're going to put a -1. Now, oh, actually, never mind. Let's not put -1. Let's put +1 instead. And +1. Let's hit play on this. And it makes way more sense now. And as you can see down here, it doesn't work because this is more than 5 meters, and that's okay. We don't really want to be able to spawn up here. But when we jump on that, then now it's in the 5 meter range. And that's going to be pretty much it for this episode, guys. We've did a lot of stuff, and we still have a lot of stuff to do to spawn towers. Now, there's a lot of glitches with this. There's a lot of bugs. So say you're launching a wave, then you're gonna see that this still has a collider, and this is pretty much still shooting. That's, of course, a behavior we don't really want. So we're gonna disable the collider. We're also going to disable the shooting for our preview. And yeah, okay, so that's going to be in the next episode, because this one is getting quite long. So I hope you enjoyed, guys. Again, if you learned something or if you liked this episode, please just go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you have any question or comment, please leave them in the comment section below. Also subscribe for more tutorials. I try to release them as fast as I can. So guys, thanks for watching again, and I will be seeing you next time.